The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Well, good morning, CHD TV. It's Brian Hooker, and it's that time again. It's doctors and scientists. There is no doubt that vaccination and the whole vaccine construct is a cradle to grave marketing enterprise. And we really, we're Children's Health Defense. I happen to be an adult. Most people would dispute that once they meet me. But now that I'm in my 60s, it's open season for the adult vaccination schedule. And I have the man right here for you. You need to read his book, Dr. Edward Geehr. Welcome to the show. The book is Unavoidably Unsafe. And tell us a little bit more about yourself and your co-author, Dr. Jeff Barkey, and also about this new book.
Sure. It's good to be back with you again, Brian. It's about a year ago that you and I chatted about the childhood vaccine book, and
Right.
Dr. Barkey and I decided to do an adult version because there were so many questions that came from our audiences about the adult vaccines. And I think it is unprecedented pressure on seniors to get vaccinated. You can't walk into a pharmacy without being accosted by the pharmacist telling you that your shots are due, or by your primary care physician telling you that it's now time for your annual and fill in the blank. So whether it's flu shots, RSV, COVID, pneumonia, whatever it happens to be. So Jeff is a practicing physician here in Newport Beach, California. I'm a retired academic physician. I was previously on the faculty at the University of California, San Francisco. And then I went into the business side of medicine and actually was involved with a pharmaceutical company for a number of years on the operations side. So I've gotten to see the pharmaceutical industry from both sides of the fence. And when COVID came around, Jeff and I were very alarmed at the change in the rules that applied to issues like informed consent, things like emergency use authorization, which was new to most people, including most physicians. And it raised our antenna to take a deeper look at not only the COVID vaccine, but the vaccine schedule in general. That produced our initial book on childhood vaccines, which is still available on Amazon. And we have a second edition, by the way, coming out this spring. But that stimulated us to write the book on adult vaccines, which we did. And the preface, actually, the beginning of the book, the first 3 chapters, actually sort of lay the foundation for how we got to where we are. It includes things like the 1986 Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, how that came about, and how that really became an unlimited license to produce vaccines and try and get them on the childhood schedule, because it removed all liability from the vaccine manufacturers. We also talk about the PrEP Act and the things that led up to that act, which enabled not only emergency use authorizations, but included complete indemnification for all, not only physicians, but administrators, hospital institutions, pharmaceutical companies, anyone, from liability for administering anything that's issued under an EUA, which the COVID was, and continues to be, by the way. So we think we laid a nice foundation, and then we go into the specific vaccines, including the vaccines given to pregnant women. So we think we covered the adult front pretty well, and I think it's a real eye-opener.
Well, I'm so thankful that you did this. Let's start with pregnant women. So on the CDC schedule, they get the COVID shot, they get the Tdap shot, presumably for pertussis protection, although we could talk about that probably for several hours. The influenza shot and the RSV shot. What in the world has happened? When my son was born, they were just starting to talk about the flu shot. And of course, I kind of grew up in a pseudo medical family. But even then, pregnancy was just so sacred. You don't take medicine, you don't take, you don't do anything to, disrupt this body that's growing within your wife's body, for sure. But now it seems like it's open season on these vaccines.
That's right. And I think that of all people, pregnant women should be avoiding all vaccines unless there are very specific indications that they should get them. But for any healthy woman in a normal pregnancy, taking a vaccine is pure risk. It is not. It is not. It really puts your fetus at risk, and may actually make you more susceptible to the very disease you're thinking you're being protected from. For example, you mentioned the flu vaccine. The flu vaccines of last season actually increased the incidence of influenza by 27%. In other words, you were more likely to get the flu after the vaccination. You were also almost 4 times as likely to get a viral respiratory infection from another virus. In other words, your immune system was being actively suppressed during that period where you were vaccinated, initially vaccinated, and actually increased your risk of infection by non-influenza viruses as well. So we find no redeeming benefit whatsoever to the flu vaccines. And ironically, it was just announced at the most recent ACIP meeting in Atlanta that they are now going to require the influenza vaccines to prove safety and effectiveness. This is unprecedented for the influenza vaccine, which simply gets cranked out based on a guess each year on the variants that will be covered by the vaccine.
Regarding the flu shot that's given to pregnant women, is there still possibility of being exposed to mercury from those flu shots? And if so, what happens when a flu shot and the Tdap shot are given together, and then you have mercury and aluminum in the same sort of mix?
Well, that's exactly the problem. Yes, the multi-dose vials for influenza are still contain mercury,
Right.
ethyl mercury. And as you point out, the Tdap vaccine contains aluminum, both of which obviously are highly neurotoxic, especially to a developing fetal brain. These brains are going amazing transformations in utero, especially in the last few months, where their replication is really quick. In the first month that a baby's born, by the way, they're forming over 1 million synapses, new synapses a minute. As the brain is developing, the brain doubles in size in the first 12 months. So the growth is phenomenal, and to subject the fetal brain or the neonatal brain to mercury or aluminum is absolutely unconscionable. They should not be given in the first year.
Let's look at RSV, and that's a vaccine for pregnant women that really, I mean, I don't like any of them. When you have a vaccine in your child, like in my family, we just do not vaccinate. But looking at the RSV, and even putting aside the fact that the RSV vaccine that's given to pregnant women can cause preterm birth, and so they just said, look, we'll give it later on in pregnancy. It still can cause preterm birth. And they're recommending 28 weeks gestation, I think between 28 and 36 weeks gestational age. But what is the risk? I mean, and what is the benefit of doing that? And what is the actual risk of a baby dying because of RSV?
Well, the risk of a healthy child dying of RSV is approaching zero.
Right.
So kids will do get RSV. It's a very common virus, and kids will get it. But the risk of a healthy child having a severe illness or hospitalized or much less die from it is approaching zero. So the risk benefit is really never discussed with the mothers during pregnancy to say, listen, your child is, you're never told your child is at practically zero risk and there's harm in doing this. That's really never discussed with pregnant women. There's always a presumed assumption of consent where it's never really discussed what the true risks and benefits are. I can tell you that for adults taking the RSV vaccine, that there has never been shown to any benefit to reducing hospitalization or severe illness. The studies are all based on lower respiratory tract infection, and the actual, if you look at the absolute uh, reduction of risk as opposed to the relative reduction of risk, which is how the pharmaceutical companies prefer to report it, it's about 1% reduction of risk versus very high risks of side effects. In fact, the resvia, which is the mRNA RSV vaccine,
Hmm.
has nearly a 10% severe adverse event rate. It's astonishing that any drug, much less a vaccine, could get approval with that high an adverse event rate.
I'm speechless. You think of adverse events, and what we were told. I had a legislator in the state of Washington tell me that the rate of adverse events from vaccines was 1 in 2 million, and now you're saying 1 in 10 for an individual vaccine. This is it's unconscionable that they would do that, but yet I I'm 62. I still consider myself relatively young as being a 60-year-old or in my
Sure.
60s. I'm clinging on to that every day. But it seems like it's open season, especially for seniors. They want an annual flu shot. They want an annual COVID shot. They want the shingles. And if you got Zostavax, then you have to go back and get Shingrix instead. What is it about seniors? Is it more of a marketing ploy? Is it an issue of dwindling, innate immunity? Why is this, so important and so heavily marketed, especially to seniors?
Well, if you think of it, Brian, we are a growing marketplace. The population is aging, and there's a wave coming through, not only of boomers, but all the successive generations are now aging up. And this is a big marketplace. There's about 200 million vaccinations a year into that marketplace and growing significantly each year. And so this is a growing and big market. And that's why when you go into a pharmacy, they're eager to get you to sign up because they have incentive payments for hitting certain targets of vaccinating their seniors. They know all the seniors in there who get prescriptions from them. They track all of them. They push the vaccines on each of them. And I find that absolutely unconscionable from the standpoint that this really ought to be a decision between a patient and physician, not between a patient and someone who doesn't know them from Adam, who walks into a pharmacy by a pharmacist, evaluates them. There's no way proper informed consent can be given, no matter what paperwork you sign. It simply isn't going to happen. Let's talk, for example, about the Shingrix. You mentioned the Shingrix vaccine, which is a
Right.
2-dose series, which is being heavily pushed right now, as you mentioned. The clinical trials that were done reported, again, relative risk reduction. They estimate up to 93%, as they say. And that everybody hears that and goes, oh, wow, I really should get that. What isn't told to you is that your absolute risk, that is how much less likely you are to get shingles after that vaccine, is actually less than 1%. It's actually 0.38. In other words, almost 270 people have to be vaccinated for one person to be spared shingles. And I'm not talking about post-herpetic neuralgia, that's the complication that everybody worries about with shingles. Shingles in and of itself, I've had shingles myself, and it was, over a couple of weeks, it was an itchy, uncomfortable period of time. But what you worry about are post-herpetic neuralgia. That is, you get inflamed nerves in the
Hmm.
distribution of that the dermatome that was affected by this reactivation of the chickenpox virus. Um, so the actual reduction in post-herpetic neuralgia is even less. It's about 1 in 280 people get a benefit. And by the way, there's a very high incidence of Guillain-Barré syndrome, which you may recall is that ascending muscular paralysis. It's almost like getting polio.
Right.
And it can be it certainly is life-threatening. It's, if anything, it's certainly inconvenient and terrifying to go through, the people who've had it. There's a very high incidence of this following the shingles vaccine. And here's something else that just came out. This was an Australian study that absolutely knocked my socks off. Um, they found that after the first dose in people 65 and older, that you were 11 times more likely to get shingles in the first 3 weeks after that shot. Just think of that.
Wow.
11 times increased likelihood of shingles after the first shot, the first 3 weeks. That to me is that should be pulled from the market. There's no reason that people should be subjected to this.
And it's so heavily marketed. I would say that, when I'm talking to a provider, the one that they push the most is the shingles shot, and they use a lot of fear porn
Yes,
for that. But if it's 1 in 270 or 1 in 280, and plus it increases your likelihood of getting shingles, in that period right after the shot. Let's talk about pneumonia. That's
sure.
another area where there's a lot of fear porn. The pneumococcal vaccine, whether it's the Prevnar or the meningococcal vaccine, what are the benefits of getting these particular shots? Especially in light of the fact that pneumonia is a fairly non-specific condition. Your lungs are basically for rent for any type of bacterium and bacterial infection. How much pneumonia do these actually prevent?
Sure. Well, it's an excellent question. And you're right. There are many, many variants of and species, subtypes of pneumonia that are out there. And in fact, you can see that by the progressive number of subtypes that are covered by the vaccines. What's interesting to me, when we went back and looked at the history of the pneumococcal vaccine, the only one that's had a clinical trial is no longer on the market. That was the Prevnar 13. So that covered
Right.
13 subspecies of the pneumococcal bacteria. Uh, and it only had a 46% relative risk reduction. Remember, this is the most optimistic way to measure it, of community-acquired pneumonia, which is the thing that you look at most. It's not like a hospital-acquired pneumonia, which is a whole different breed. These vaccines are directed at the pneumonias you would get in the community and the serotypes that are out there. 46%, when we looked at the actual absolute risk reduction, it was 0.1%, which means for one person to benefit from not getting a community-acquired pneumonia, 1,000 people would have to be vaccinated with the Prevnar 13 vaccine. And this was, by the way, and so this was terminated. That vaccine is no longer available. That ended in 2024. There
Right.
are now there's Vaxnuvance, which is a 15 serotype. There's Prevnar 20, which is a 20 serotype, and there's the Capvaxi, which is the 11 serotype, and then there's the Pneumovax 23, which is a whole different. It's based on the polysaccharide coating of the
Right.
shell of the bacteria as opposed to the others antigens. None of those underwent clinical trials. They all went under what's called seropositivity testing, meaning do you get antibodies produced based on injecting people with these vaccines? Antibodies are produced when given these vaccines, but the level of antibodies does not correlate with clinical protection.
Right.
There is nothing like a clinical trial in order to prove both safety and effectiveness. None of these vaccines have undergone a clinical trial except the Pneumovax 23, where they claim it's a 57% claim of prevention of community-acquired pneumonia and a 75% claim of 65 and older. However, we can't find the data. The data
Right.
are not reported. It's not in the package insert. We can't find it anywhere on the website at the CDC. We cannot validate any of these claims. This is simply an assertion as far as we're concerned. It is not based on data that we have access to and can analyze ourselves.
That's incredible. I mean, all of this stuff is supposed to be on clinicaltrials.gov, as well as in, the some type of summary of the trial in the package insert. What has happened to, informed consent in, in this whole realm? It seems like the practitioners don't know, the patients definitely don't know, and you actually do some digging beyond what a typical practitioner would ever have time to do, and you can't find it.
Yeah, in fact, we address this very issue, Brian, in our book. The end of the book is all about the issue of informed consent. And in our minds, informed consent revolves around something that is difficult for the pharmaceutical companies to fake, which is the package insert. The package insert's got to spill all the beans. They know not only the clinical trials that were done leading to approval of the vaccine, but then all the post-marketing studies that are where the data is available. They have to put that information in there as well as biodistribution studies, genetic studies, fertility studies, all of these kinds of things. All of that has to be revealed in the package insert. So what we do, we show people what's in the package insert, and then we actually created for patients to print out on their own and can inform consent form that's based on the package insert. So we talk about how you would go through, explain to me, talking to your provider, what are my risks of getting this disease? How much will this improve my odds of avoiding that disease if I get this vaccine? We go down through all of these things, and we have what we propose is a new consent form, which is really based on the package insert, which would actually require physicians for the first time to look at the package insert. Because as you know, right now, the CDC puts out a crimp sheet, which is a 1 or 2 pager, which is supposed to summarize that vaccine package insert, but in fact puts a very rosy picture on the vaccines in terms of safety and effectiveness, and dumbs it all down so that anybody reading it would have to conclude that, yeah, this is safe and effective for me. Nothing could be further from the truth. You have to personalize these things to the individual risk, and you can't generalize it for public health. At the end of the day, it's a vaccine for you. It's not a vaccine for the next 1,000 people. It's a vaccine for you and whether or not it makes sense for you. And we talk about how you distill that process with your doctor in a non-threatening and non-confrontational way.
I absolutely love it. So practical that you would do that, and say in those practitioner visits, if you're working with your practitioner and you feel some level of pressure or coercion to do that, what do you do? What do you do at that particular point in time? Just and you're trying to make a logical decision for you, for your child, or whatever. I mean, what's your recommendation at that point?
Our recommendation is if you feel uncomfortable, you feeling pressured at all, it's fine to say, listen, I want to consider all the information about this. I haven't had time to evaluate it myself. I know this is a complicated topic, and I'd like to research it more before making a decision. And that's why, by the way, we generated the consent form that we did, because that's something you could actually leave with the doctor and say, would you mind taking a look at this and telling me what you think, what this would mean for me in particular about this vaccine based on the package insert. That's a non-threatening, non-confrontational way of saying, listen, I'm not prepared to make a decision at this time. I appreciate your recommendation. Please take a look at this so that it can help me evaluate the value for me and my family.
Absolutely. Very non-confrontational, and also point of care medicine, because it's about the individual getting the shot, not about the whole realm of public health in the United States.
Correct.
Let's talk really specifically about mRNA shots. Which diseases are there mRNA shots now for adults? And what are the pitfalls? What are the things that we should be concerned about there?
Well, the mRNA shots, as you know, came out. The initial ones were with COVID. Now there's the
Right.
one for RSV. By the way, the Pfizer trial for the mRNA flu shot vaccine blew up. It was terrible results, and we're having a hard time actually getting that data
Right.
of the failed trials. And we know there's a bunch of other vaccines in process. But I'm not aware of any other adult vaccines that have been approved based on mRNA technology. And I really think, given the current construct of the FDA and the ACIP, the Advisory Committee for the CDC, I think it's
Right.
unlikely we're going to see additional mRNA vaccines anytime soon because they are going to have to undergo safety and effectiveness trials, which they've effectively avoided in the past. Or if they did them, were so truncated or the control groups were blown up so early, it was impossible to track the safety and effectiveness of the outcomes.
Well, but you said that there was an RSV shot that was mRNA as well.
That's right.
That's marketed currently, or
Yes, it's mResvia. That's the one where I said we could not verify the clinical trial data in it. It's available commercially, but we could not verify the claims of effectiveness.
right now. No, Dr. Geehr, and this goes for your co-author as well, Dr. Barkey. This is not flag football. This is full contact, full pharmaceutical vaccinologists. Lots of money involved. What's been the blowback of writing these types of books and telling telling a different side of the whole vaccine story? What's it been like for you and your co-author?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that early on, certainly this was during 2021,
Right.
our licenses here in California were threatened
Hmm.
because we were speaking out, and that was a time of maximal suppression. And Jeff and I persisted. I mean, we weren't, I mean, if I had to go down with the ship, well, we're going to do it because what was happening, and the trust in the CDC, which was utterly unfounded based on what they were promulgating at the time, had to be exposed. And so we both went out there, we took risks. Fortunately, our licenses were spared, but there was enormous pressure on us. There continues to be pressure on us. Now, Jeff, more than me, I'm retired from clinical practice. I have a small private practice, and I write books and so forth. But Jeff he's still in the mix, has a big thriving primary care practice here in Southern California. And, I can tell you that the pressures are lessening in that I think the pharmaceutical companies are trying to, they realize that pure muscle and force, which worked initially, is now has to become a little more subtle. And so there's less direct threat to physician practices, although that does persist. And then there is sort of more indirect ways of sort of getting propaganda out there, putting out articles that dispute our findings and others. And people like you and Peter McCullough and others do a marvelous job at deconstructing some of those studies that are coming out.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your work. The book, Unavoidably Unsafe for Adults, and the original book that came out last year, Unavoidably Unsafe Childhood Vaccines Reconsidered. I couldn't be more thankful for your work and for Dr. Barkey's work as well. Are there any other places where you've published or where individuals can follow you or Dr. Barkey?
I can be followed. I have a Substack called Real Health Flash at substack.com, Real Health Flash.
Okay.
And Jeff is on RX for Liberty. He has an Instagram page. He does daily videos. I mean, he's very active. And he actually takes online patients as well as in his private practice. So people who were, for example, COVID vaccine injured, he takes care of those people online as well as in his practice.
Well, again, thank you so much. This is amazing work. I've got the book for children. I just found out. I'm a scientist. I read the science and read the literature. I apologize that this adult book snuck by me, but thank you so much for this work, and thank you everybody for joining us for this important episode of Doctors and Scientists. You really need to check out both of these books. Very, very user friendly. And such pertinent information. And you have a great Friday.
Okay, we're live. Tell us your name, please.
Carrie McLean.
And this is about your daughter. So, when you were pregnant with her, did you at any time have any conversations about vaccinations or anything like that?
No.
So you were right on board with whatever the doctor said?
Yep, I followed everything the doctor said and just went along with it.
How was she when she was born?
She was born early. She had to have surgery right away, but she was doing okay, doing really well.
How early?
35 weeks.
And surgery for what?
She had to have a shunt put in. She has hydrocephalus. She has water on the brain.
Water on the brain.
Mhm.
Okay. But so between being born and the 4 months, can you describe her compared to what we're going to be talking about after the 4 months?
Yes, she was doing everything typically. Had not had any issues at all. She had her typical 4-month shots. About 10 to 14 days later, I noticed one day in the living room, she was kind of like she was zoned out. I tried to get her attention. She didn't answer me, nor did she blink, so I kind of freaked out. I went in the kitchen and grabbed a plate and threw it on the floor trying to startle her. That didn't work. She didn't even blink.
This is after the vaccine?
After, about 10 to 14 days after. Started and then this would happen all the time. It would happen in front of her dad, and anywhere from 10 seconds to up to a minute, just zoned out, no response. I would take her to the pediatrician, and they'd say, I don't know what it is, because she wouldn't do it for them. So after about 6 months of this consistently happening, she was not on medication, but they gave us a little bottle of diazepam to give her, which I was afraid to give her because
Wait, what even is that?
Valium. They said, put this in her mouth, hold it in her cheek. When she's
4 months old.
4 months old. And I was like, but she could choke on it, and if I'm putting my finger in her mouth, that just didn't seem smart. I was like, and then, plus, I just knew that it was not a smart idea for a baby. Especially when no known cause we didn't know what was going on, so why would I give her meds? But I trusted her doctors. One day she happened to go in for a typical pediatrician appointment, and right in front of the doctor she started seizing, but it was her whole body this time, not just zoned out. The doctor's like, oh, there it is, she's having a seizure. And I'm in constant contact with her because I was like, she's doing this all the time. So from that point on, she was put on another dose of Valium and an anti-seizure medicine, I don't know the name of it. And she started getting more and more seizures. I remember
Stop vaccinating though after 4 months?
I did not, because I trusted her doctors. I didn't connect anything. I didn't think of it because I believe the doctors told me. I trust them. And it wasn't until Maddie was several years old and several seizures and multiple meds that I started wondering what was really going on. Is something going on to make her do this? And it wasn't until I saw, I started questioning the doctors, but of course they didn't like that. One practice, even still local, will threaten to discharge you from the practice if you do not take any and all vaccinations. At the time, that was before they really forced it, so I just kind of went along with it. And then I would say 2014-ish, my then husband saw a documentary about marijuana. And he said that he heard it would help children. And I said, well, that's just crazy. I'm not going to give her that. And he was like, you're giving her all kinds of meds. And at one point, Maddie was on up to 3 anti-seizure meds. She did drop down, but she's back up onto 3 now. And we heard about Jason David and his son and his story of CBD. So we started giving her CBD. In July 2015 was the first time that she did not have a seizure, was not in some kind of pain episode to where she was very defiant. Like if she said no, that was it, and she'd melt down. She acted like she could enjoy herself and live life. Once I figured out and started doing more reading and research that these are bad, vaccines are not good, I started telling doctors, no, I don't want them. I did get a lot of pushback, especially the last couple years. But I do.
What kind of pushback?
Her pediatrician's office said they would not see her anymore. They said I signed a paper and I refused. Then they said that if I didn't agree to the latest vaccines, that we'd have to talk about her future care. So I actually at that point stopped attending the pediatrician for nearly a year because she was healthy. I would take her in for her well visits, but I did not want to discuss visits, injections. In fact, even my own daughter would come in and say, I don't want a vaccine, I don't want a shot. At the most recent visit, they tried to push a couple shots. They tried to push pneumonia, flu, and of course, the other one. Other than that, she's been doing really well, but if she didn't have to have her vaccines in the first place, which I trusted her doctor, I loved her pediatrician, I thought he was doing the best for her, but then find out they were actually harming her, it's just really sad, and I wish I had just woke up sooner and realized that these are really bad, and now I refuse all vaccinations because I know they're all harmful. I just wished I had done it sooner and just stopped vaccinating her, or at least slow down the vaccines, you know. Because I really do believe once she started having those, they started putting those meds in, I believe that changed her entire brain structure and everything, because she's 22 years old, almost 22, but she's developing like 4 or 5 years old. So having all those meds in her system constantly, at one point she was up to 32 pills a day. Now she's on about 15, and she just started 2 new meds. So
Nearly 22 years old. Describe a day in her life.
She gets up, she likes to get up, check her phone, get her music on, get up and go sit in her room, just wake up slowly. Then she'll take her medicine and go about her day. She'll take her CBD, and if she's feeling good, she'll go to her day program and just hang out. But it does make me sad because she is 22 years old. She's not the typical 22-year-old. She should be out and about, like living life. Not that she isn't now, but like living life. And it's really hard to see when, it's just hard.
Very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have siblings?
She does. She has a sibling. She's 25. So, and my sister, Maddie's the youngest. Her sister's older, and so of course with her, I did all the vaccines with her. I did question it one time, and I don't know why. I just had a hunch. I asked the doctor, I was like, does she need, her older sister, I was like, does a baby need all these shots? And I was like, this just seems like a lot for a baby. Like, she's not even sick. Like, she hasn't even been around hepatitis and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, no, she needs them all. Don't worry, you're just a new mom. And I would always go along with it, but I would just feel so bad because even between the 3 years that my children were born, there were so many more vaccines they came up with. So I remember going to take my youngest one, and I was like, I don't remember so many on the list. And then now there's even more. And it's just scary thinking they're just doing this to so many people, and so many people don't even question their doctors.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mr. I'm sorry about your daughter. It's tragic.
It really is. I wish they would just stop pushing it, or just make it, if you want to vaccinate your kids, you can. But it's not fair the way they do it now, and the way they make you feel if you don't, like you have some kind of disease.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you, because you're warning the future generations. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.